you have to look at this whole universe is created by mind. Okay, so the karma is created by mind. Whole universe is created by mind. So what created mind? Does anybody know? Because I don't. It's interesting, like, what is this thing that's holding anger or fear or regret, shame, likes and dislikes and opinions? What's the thing that's holding that? I don't know that either. So that's why in Zen, we're investigating that. What is holding this thing? I heard about a story recently. There was this woman who went to a monastery and wanted to sit. But as for all guests, they had to work first, and then later they could sit. So this woman did a lot of work. And then eventually she was able to practice for several years at this temple. And one of her jobs was to get water from the well and then bring it to the temple. And the container they used was interesting too. It was made out of bamboo, and the bottom was weaved very tightly. And you would just scoop up the water. So one day she went to the well to get the water, and she scooped it up. Or actually, this was nighttime. It was after evening practice. So she scooped up the water, and she was carrying it back to the temple. And she looked in the bucket and noticed that the moon was reflecting in the water. She was like, wow, this is amazing. And so as she was carrying this bucket, the bottom gave out and all the water fell. And she looked, there was no moon. And then at that moment, she wrote a poem, something like, chasing this and that, I tried to keep this bucket together. But the bottom fell out. Where the water does not stay, the reflection of the moon cannot dwell. It's a really wonderful poem, right? What is this thing that's holding all of this stuff, this karma? Sometimes karma in Buddhism can be looked at as mind, habit, habitual thinking. So what is the container that's holding all of those things? So we investigate that. But we don't know. If we investigate closely, we can't find an answer. So if everything comes from mind, where does mind come from? In Buddhism, it talks about the 12 links of dependent origination. So the beginning of suffering, the end of suffering, but how it all starts and the whole process of old age, sickness, and death. And the very first one is ignorance. You hear that too about the three poisons. Ignorance is one. So if everything comes from ignorance, again, where does ignorance come from? So if we pierce through that question, where does mind come from? Pierce through that question, then the bottom falls out and everything becomes clear.